Today's episode is all about early grief. Those brutal first days, weeks, and even months after a loss, when the world looks different, sounds different, and feels like it's been completely tilted off its axis. This isn't medical or psychological advice, it's just me sharing what many people experience after loss, but rarely talk about. So, grab yourself a cup of tea and maybe some tissues, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Now, whether you're listening because you're grieving yourself, or maybe supporting someone who is grieving, or simply exploring what it means to be human, you're very welcome here. When loss first happens, whether it's sudden or expected, people often describe the early hours as surreal. It can feel like the world around you continues on with its normal rhythm, while you're suspended in some slowed down version of reality. If your loved one had a terminal illness, then your grief will have started way before they died. Anticipatory grief is real. It's your mind's way of coming to terms with what's coming down the road. I experienced this. Watching someone you love slowly disappear through illness or even dementia is one of the worst feelings in the world. Knowing they are going to die does not prepare you for when they take their last breath. Nothing can. I remember the disbelief when Matthew took his last breath. Suddenly the light went out in his eyes, and his last breath took my breath away. This was followed by a few minutes of chaos as we tried to make sense of the situation. And then the pain. It felt like a silent scream that couldn't get out, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I don't know how long this lasted, but I remember the overwhelm, the shock, and the pain. Matthew died in a hospice, surrounded by his loved ones, and we were told his death was imminent, but nothing can prepare you for that moment. I remember running my fingers through his hair, and it still moved. I held his lifeless hand and watched as he became more and more pale. I could tell he wasn't there anymore. His soul, or spirit, whatever you call it, had left his body, and his body was now his empty shell. Whether you lost your loved one suddenly or after a long illness, there's no easy way to lose them. We never have enough time with our loved ones. I appreciate not everyone gets to be with their loved one at the end, and I cannot imagine how that would feel. I stayed with Matthew for hours afterwards, not wanting to leave. I didn't want this to be the last time I saw my son. I also felt it was a very special time. It felt very sacred. After a few hours, I let go of his hand. I kissed and hugged him for the last time and walked away. That was the hardest walk of my life. Part of me wanted to run back and hold him one last time, but I pushed myself to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. I still remember the faces of the staff and the receptionist as we walked out. And as we walked towards the car, it felt so wrong and so unfair. Our children are not supposed to die before us. And then, that night, I slept like a baby. And the next day, I felt so guilty. In reality, I hadn't slept properly since his diagnosis 2 years previous. But those last few days in the hospice, I was lucky if I got even a cat nap. So yes, my son died in the afternoon and I slept really well that night. Grief is weird. Every reaction is a normal reaction. After the initial shock, the first week brings a different sensation, a heaviness that settles in once the rituals begin, the phone calls, the paperwork, the arrangements, the gatherings. Many people describe this week as a blur. You might later remember small details like the way someone hugged you or what the weather was like, but large parts of the week may feel foggy, and this is common. Grief can be exhausting. You might sleep too much or barely sleep at all. You might forget to eat or want to eat constantly. You might feel fine for an hour and then collapse into tears the next. If you're going through this now, you are not broken. Your body is reacting to a profound emotional shock. I felt numb for days, possibly weeks, but it's a survival mechanism. The pain and shock of the loss is too much to carry, so you go into a kind of numbness. I remember questioning myself. Why didn't I feel broken? Why wasn't I constantly crying? Did I not love Matthew enough to be falling apart? Little did I know that the numbness was protecting me. Then, bit by bit, I felt the brutality of grief in waves. At the beginning, they were like tsunamis, and in between the waves, the numbness would return until the next tsunami. Every grief is unique. Your timeline doesn't have to match anyone else's. But basically, early grief is unpredictable. One moment you might feel deeply sad, the next angry, the next strangely calm. You might experience sudden waves of emotion, disbelief, anxiety, guilt, even relief. Yes, this can be normal too. Also confusion and moments of peace. These emotions don't arrive in any particular order. They rotate, repeat, overlap and fade unpredictably. If you find yourself thinking contradictory thoughts like, I can't believe this happened, and of course this happened, you're experiencing one of the mind's natural responses to loss. Grief is not tidy. In those early days, grief is often interrupted by logistics like the phone calls, documents, decisions, messages, organising the funeral. These tasks can feel painfully mundane in the middle of something so emotional. You may find yourself resentful of the fact that anything requires your attention at all. I remember organising the catering for Matthew's wake and thinking, how many sandwiches will we need? And then my next thought was, how can I even think about anything else? My son is dead and I'm thinking about how many sandwiches we'll need. The funeral is a massive milestone, and everyone deals and copes with it in their own unique way. And then after the funeral, there's nothing to do. I remember feeling like I was in limbo land. In early grief, people often show up, sometimes beautifully, sometimes awkwardly, or sometimes not at all. But support can look like meals, texts, people bringing you shopping, walking the dog, sitting beside you quietly, sharing stories, or just checking in. And yet, even with support, grief can feel lonely. You might be surrounded, yet feel isolated, and this is normal. No one else had your exact relationship with the person you lost. No one else had your exact memories, history, or inner world. If you're supporting someone who's grieving, remember, it's okay to not know what to say. Presence often matters more than words. One of the hardest moments in early grief comes after the first week or two, when the world seems to move on. People go back to work, the meals stop arriving, the messages slow down, but for you, the loss will still feel immediate and raw. This can create a sense of being out of sync with the world. You're still in the early stages of your grief while others are getting on with their lives. If this is happening to you, know this: there is no expiry date on grief. You don't have to match anyone else's pace. In the early weeks, healing doesn't look like joy or closure. It looks like moments. We like to call them glimmers, moments where you laugh unexpectedly, you feel a flicker of interest in something, you notice a sense of relief or lightness, you get through an hour without thinking about your loved one. This is usually followed by guilt. But these moments don't betray your grief. They don't erase the loss. They are simply reminders that you're still here, still human, still capable of feeling something beyond your grief. These moments don't replace grief, but they help you grow around it. If you're in the first days or weeks of grief, you're doing the best you can. You're surviving something profound. Your grief is not too big, too small, too quiet, or too loud. It's yours and it's valid. The early days are not meant to be figured out. They are meant to be lived through, moment by moment, one breath, one step at a time. You don't have to find meaning right now. You don't have to be brave, and you don't have to move on. Just keep pointing in the right direction and know that you are not alone. The love you have for your loved one doesn't die. At first, this love feels painful. It follows you around, keeping you sad, but over time you will start to see the glimmers, those chinks of light that shine in through the cracks. A glimmer could be a sign from your loved one. It could be a warm feeling inside when you sense your loved one near. You may start to notice the glimmers after a few weeks or months. Everyone is different. I used to think that time was a healer, but I've realised now we are the healers, and that time is just the vehicle that takes us on that journey. How we process our grief determines how we move forward, but we need to feel it and learn how to nurture it. Grief is just another word for love. I'm a few years down the road, and I can see how far I've come, but I still have days where I miss Matthew dreadfully, and I still have moments where I can be completely grief-stricken. But mostly, I've made peace with my grief, but I appreciate I'm still a work in progress. Wherever you are in your grief journey, know that you will survive. You've survived all the waves till now, and you're still here. You may get all the support in the world and may be the world's greatest therapist, but you have to put the work in. Nobody else can do it for you. And remember, feeling is healing. Your loved one will want you to make peace with your grief, and I believe that making peace with your grief sends your loved ones peace too. If this episode stirred something in you, I hope you'll pass it on to someone who might need the same comfort. I'm Louise Bates, therapist, author and your host. Thank you for being here. I'll be with you next time as we continue to walk gently through the journey of grief. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. If you found it comforting, please consider subscribing to my podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Please also leave a review because it helps others to find the show. Together we can help each other become more grief literate. To learn more about my personal journey and my 2 books on grief, visit www.louisebates.co.uk. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by my son Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope. And finally, if you're struggling with grief or concerned about your mental health, please reach out to your doctor. You don't have to go through this alone. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and thank you for listening.